I'm Dave Kemp, and I'm a righteous savage. My name is Dave Kemp, and we're at Tombstone Gun Range and Training Center in Marion, Illinois.
So, Dave, you got quite the history. I read your bio, and I hope our viewers will go to your website. We'll include a link. But tell me, what's your elevator speech on who is Dave Kemp?
Man, well, time flies when you get to the end of your career, and it's been a long one, I guess, relatively speaking, for a lot of people. But I've been a police officer for 29 years. My latest job I've been at for 25. I'm getting ready to retire here in the next couple of months. So it's a end of a journey that I've enjoyed incredibly. And so over that law enforcement journey, I've been able to build a lot of experience and make a lot of contacts and start to kind of really develop myself in the firearms training world. 10 years ago, that brought us to this place and looking for some property. Seems like no matter where you live at, people are always asking, where can we go shoot? And Southern Illinois was no different. There's only a couple actual gun ranges in the area, and those are kind of membership style, and you can't get in unless you know somebody, and then that person dies. And it was always a struggle to find a real place to go shoot. And even with that being said, a lot of gun ranges really wouldn't let you do a whole lot, especially at an indoor gun range. What you can do is very limited. You probably can't use a holster. There's a lot of other things you can do. So we didn't just want a gun range. We wanted a training center, more of a professional-based place to go. And not that we have to train you, but that you could take training seriously. You could get classes from professional instructors. It's not just, most ranges, I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of them. Most of them are at the sewer treatment plant at the end of a gravel road by the city dump or somewhere, and you set up some beer bottles and you go shoot, or you go to strip cut somewhere and that's where you go shoot. And we wanted a facility that people could really use to benefit them in their firearms experience, whether it's just sporting clays or the sporting side of shooting or self-defense. And so about 10 years ago, we started looking for some property and found this awesome 82 acres here, and we've been running full speed ever since.
Cool. How do you mix your law enforcement career with the operation of your range?
Man, it's burning a candle at every single possible end, I will tell you that for sure. So to make any type of side gig or extra job you have work good, you've got to work at it hard and you got to do it right. And when you're passionate about it, it's something you're interested in, you just make time. That means probably a lot less sleep, a little less time with the family, but we've spent a lot of hours and tried to surround ourselves with good people. And it's taken time. Anything worth doing that's going to value later is going to cost you something. And so sometimes that's money, time, sometimes that's everything. And so there's always a cost. As I get towards the end of my career, I've learned to balance that a lot more, focus on the things that are really important, family, friends, and that type of thing. But lots of time and effort, but it's a labor of love, no doubt.
Yeah. In 25 years of law enforcement experience, you must have seen a lot.
Yeah.
Can you just give us a brief rundown of some of your credentials? And if somebody read your bio, what would it say?
Right. So I'll just start back as a young 22-year-old who hadn't even finished college yet. Me and my buddies were all interested in law enforcement. We started testing. We tested all over the Midwest and Southeast. We tested for jobs in Nashville, Tennessee, and Tampa, Florida, and just all over the place. And we weren't even done with school yet. And finally, Decatur, Illinois called and said, hey, come up and do an interview. And I thought, well, I'm not done with school yet. What should I do? And it's like, take a job. That's what I should do, is start making money. So my first cop job was Decatur, Illinois. It's about 2 hours south of Chicago. And I'm telling you, there was plenty of crime there to keep us busy. So I worked 4 years, midnights in Decatur, and that's where I got my feet wet in law enforcement. I was never in the military, so all of my experience with firearms comes from the law enforcement aspect of that. But I think that also gives you a really good perspective on a lot of things that are really important. And some of that is you just have a look into real life. You get to see what really happens versus what the book answer is, as far as, you know, what guns work well. Well, how about ammunition? Does it always perform? You know, so kind of like the real end user things that a lot of students that come out to us want to know about. Man, we've got some experience to tell you firsthand about how things really work in the real world. So started in Decatur. I'm from Southern Illinois, so started a family and decided we wanted to be closer to family. So in 1998, got hired at Carbondale PD, and we kind of worked my way, stayed on patrol for 5 or 6 years there. Went into investigations, went into a drug unit, worked narcotics for 3 years.
Oh boy.
Got out of there, was our training officer for about 3 years, and got promoted to sergeant, working the road, supervising a patrol shift, midnights. Did that, worked as a sergeant for 7 or 8 years, and then got promoted to lieutenant in 2019. And I've been supervising midnight and evenings patrol shift, as well as being the commander for our SRT, our SWAT team, for the last 10 years.
Wow, you're a busy guy.
A lot of stuff going on.
So Dave, behind you there is a banner. It says Fighting Third. What's the story behind that banner over there?
Yeah, there's a little bit of history to that. So when I started in Decatur back in 1994, I was just a young kid. One of my supervisors was a master sergeant named Larry Gregg, and he was a former Marine and kind of brought his military history to the police department. And I remember specifically in all of our paperwork, shift schedules, memos, he always had this slogan on everything, and it said Fighting Third, which was represented third shift, best of the best. Like, we were the shift. Like, if you wanted a bad guy caught, if you wanted crime suppressed, if you wanted anything done, you came to midnights, and you got those guys to do what needed to be done.
That's usually when the bad stuff happens,
and
right?
So over my career, I've spent probably 2/3 of my career working midnights. So I'm just kind of fond. I'm not fond of not sleeping very well, but I'm fond of that type of police work that goes along with being out in the middle of the night, when ultimately that's when the worst of the worst is going on.
Yeah. I want to step back into your undercover days. And, you know, I think a lot of folks, we're pampered a little bit because we're, you know, daytime folks. We're not nocturnal, but so much bad stuff happens at night. And not everybody out there is a good person. So how would you kind of address that reality to the viewers that have not experienced what you have?
Yeah, I would say, man, there's a lot of people. I'd say most people in America live with a pretty good false sense of security. And it's because usually in your daily life, if you live in a decent town and maybe a smaller town, you get up, you go to work, you go to the store, and you're not getting carjacked. Your house isn't getting home invaded. Those things just don't happen to you. And so you think there aren't any bad things going on anyway. It was very interesting when I started working in the drug unit is, as a cop, you already know like how many criminals are out there, and you have a little bit better idea of what the criminal underworld is like. But then you start working narcotics, and you start listening to people's phone calls when they don't know it. You're following them around. You're doing all this stuff to really see what's going on, and it's shocking. Even to somebody who had been a police officer for over 10 years, you start to realize that things aren't quite like they seem. Things aren't just normal. Like, all the normal people you see or you think are not. They're the people. In our concealed carry classes, I tell our students, I said, one thing I learned is that there are a lot of people. It's like we just don't see the underworld. It's almost like a waterbed. Like, there's water in the mattress and you don't see it. You know it's there, but you don't see the water until every once in a while there's a leak. And, oh, there's this trickling out. Well, that's like the armed robbery. Like, oh yeah, there actually is something bad going on. And over here, water trickles out somewhere else. And, oh, that's the home invasion. Like, yeah, I never thought about that going on. But just under our feet, everywhere in society, is this huge number of people that are bad people that are out to do really bad, evil things, and you just don't see it. And it's people. If people really understood it, they just haven't had that experience. You know, your experiences in your life drive your beliefs. If you've been sexually assaulted before, you will believe that it's possible that somebody could attack you again, and your beliefs drive your actions in the future. So if, like, you know, we have a lot of females that have been either through domestic violence situations, they know the threat, there's a threat there. And so they believe it might happen again. So they train to protect themselves, whether it's with firearms or self-defense or whatever the case is. So if you've never had the experiences with bad things, you might not really understand it. But the people who have, they fully understand it, and they actually take action to do something about it.
Yeah. So Dave, we just were talking about, you know, folks who had been through traumatic experiences, have been maybe attacked or victim of a crime. What would you tell our viewers, or what advice would you give them as far as recognizing potential threats or recognizing when something's not right?
Yeah. So a couple things is you need to be paying attention. Number one, have some type of plan for whatever your situational awareness is. Whether you're off your phone, whether you're just kind of looking around, checking out people, it does not mean you have to be paranoid. Doesn't mean you're always worried that every second some bad thing is going to happen. But if you pull up to a four-way stop intersection, you're probably going to stop, and you're probably going to look both ways, because every once in a while a semi runs a stop sign and kills somebody. So it doesn't mean you live in paranoia. It just means you're sensible about your surroundings. So you have to plan to do that intentionally. Like, I'm going to actually on purpose look around. And so then people say, well, how do I know, like, well, what's you know, suspicious? What should I be looking out for? And really, you just base that off of your own personal life experience. What would you normally do? If you pull up to an ATM at 11 o'clock at night and you're waiting for your money to come out, and a guy comes walking up to the ATM and right next to your car standing there, like, do you know, is he going to rob you? Well, I don't know, but is that normal? Based on what would I do that as a normal person? I probably wouldn't do that. So you're basing everybody else's activity and behavior probably off of your own, like what you would assess as normal. And then you have to have some type of action that you've planned out ahead of time, probably just for a few types of scenarios. We could what if 1,000 scenarios. What do I do in this situation? You can't memorize the solution for every problem, but you need to have some general principles that you kind of live by to help guide you, to help make decisions. You know, for example, if you had heard somebody breaking into your house and you grabbed your gun and you went in the living room and there was a guy just standing there looking at you, and you were wondering if you should shoot this person or not, if you're not sure, you probably shouldn't coin flip killing somebody. So if you ever find yourself on the fence of like, I don't know what to do, lean towards not doing something, at least for another second or two, until your brain can gather more information. A lot of times in these self-defense scenarios, we're trying to give people quick solutions. Like that one, well, if I'm not sure, do I shoot? I don't know. Another quick solution is a question you can ask yourself is, what are the consequences if I don't do something right now? Am I going to be okay? And is everybody else going to be okay? Well, if that's the answer, then I probably don't need to take action this second. But if people's lives are on the line, if somebody's trying to carjack you out of your car and your 4-year-old is in a car seat in the back seat, no, they can't drive away with a car. What are the consequences if I just decide to let the guy get my car and drive off? Well, my kid's going to die. You know, so little questions like that, if you know in advance, like how to, you know, like what the formula is, you can solve any problem out there most of the time by a couple of quick questions, and also just having some plans of what am I going to do? Am I going to fight back or resist, run? You know, what are a couple of my options in most scenarios?
Yeah. And what are the legal repercussions? Do you live in a castle doctrine state? Do you not? You know, and I'm sure that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and sometimes it's difficult because we have concealed carry. If you get a concealed carry permit in Illinois, you can carry in 26 other states too. But what's Missouri's laws for self-defense, and what's Indiana and Ohio? Like, I don't know. Luckily, Illinois has a pretty high standard. compared to most other states. Compared to Florida, for example, it's a pretty low standard in Florida for being able to use deadly force.
Right.
I think in Florida it says if you're being assaulted with violence as part of the definition. So it's kind of, it could be confusing for depending on what your state you're in. One of the things I tell people in our classes is, listen, let's say you find yourself in some type of situation, you get your gun out, and you think you've made the decision, I have to shoot this person to save somebody's life, my life. You're about to pull the trigger, and Instructor Dave comes along and hits the pause button, and everybody freezes in place, but you can still hear me. And I say, listen, Denny, I know the future. I've seen it. And after you shoot this person, you're going to prison. You just need to know that. And I hit play. What are you going to do? If it's the right thing to do, you'll shoot all your bullets into this person. Because it's in law enforcement, we call it a righteous shooting. A righteous shooting means it wasn't just I checked the boxes. Did the guy have a gun? Did he say he was going to kill me? Was he close to me? It's not a checkbox mentality. A righteous shooting is you had to do it. Yeah. There was no other option whatsoever. Not that we wanted to, but that's just what the bad guy forced us to do. So if you're making a decision on deadly force based on doing the right thing, because it had to be done, it doesn't matter what state's wording is on a law. Yeah, it'll be the right thing. And sometimes people overthink a lot of times, like, well, what if this situation and that? We tell people, try to avoid having to shoot somebody at almost all costs. And if you decide to do that, it should be worth going to prison over. Like, right. Yep. If a guy's kidnapping your 4-year-old out of your bedroom window, remember that question, what are the consequences if I don't do anything? It's horrible. You don't want me to describe the consequences of that. Yeah. Right? That would be a righteous shooting, and you would just do it just because it's the right, it had to be done, not because of what you think the consequences are going to be. And we do get a lot of people that kind of a cowboy mentality, yeah. No offense, yeah. To I've got a gun now, yeah. I can conceal carry, and I can, yeah. I'm good.
They have a sense of empowerment, and maybe don't have that training. I think
sometimes people leave our class like, man, this is pretty serious. We've had some people like really rethink what they were doing here. Yeah. Like, I don't know. You've kind of scared me straight a little bit, Yeah. So we see a lot of reactions that way. Yeah.
So Dave, I believe training and preparation is very important. But we talk a lot about situational awareness, and one of the scenarios that we discuss often is gas stations. Give me kind of your spin on what you would advise people on gas station safety and
yeah, I would say if I could call it a mistake, I think one of the biggest mistakes we see people make with firearm self-defense is just believing that if the gun is like within 20 feet of you, you're going to be okay. And everybody's going to fall on a spectrum when it comes to carrying a gun for self-defense. Some people we have that even come to concealed carry classes, they come take the training, they get the permit, they're never going to carry concealed ever in their life. They're just kind of here for the gun training and the legal aspect of it, and they're just going to have a gun in their house, and they just in case there's a loaded gun in the car, they want to be good. And so they're on one end of the scale where they're probably never going to carry a gun in public. Then you got other people on the other end that are probably carrying 2 1911s, Clint Smith style, everywhere they go until maybe even while they sleep at night. And there's not really a place where we feel like you have to be on this place on the spectrum. It's got to be a right fit for you. Now, we do try to nudge people like, hey, maybe you need to think about carrying a little more than you did before. And especially, so back to this gas station scenario, we see a lot of people that feel pretty comfortable having a gun in the car, in the center console, in the door pocket. And I've seen way too many videos of people going to gas stations, they're pumping gas, and there's the guy right there with a gun at the pump, and your gun's in the car. Yeah. And I will tell you right now, that gun does you zero good. And so remember, there's only 2 times when you're probably going to need a gun. One is if someone else is the target of the attack. You roll up to your kid's school, there's a kid walking in with a trench coat and an AR-15, and he's headed for the front door. You got some time to figure out, like, what's going on here? What do I do? Or you roll up to the 7-Eleven, and there's a bad guy with a gun in the clerk's face, and you're like, do I get involved? Do I just call the police? In those situations, somebody's life is in danger, but you have time to figure out what you're going to do for your safety, for everybody else's. The only other time you might need a gun is if you're the target. Somebody walks right up to you with a gun in your face and says, give me your car, give me your money, whatever. In those scenarios where you are the target, the only gun that's going to help you is the one that is physically attached to your body. The one that's in your car, I mean, the bad guy's got gun out, finger on the trigger. So bad guy has this much physical movement to do. You've got to turn around, get to your car, hope he doesn't know you're going for a gun, hope they don't see it. It's practically impossible. And we've done a lot of these scenarios with ammunition guns and on a range in controlled environments. And almost never does it equal good guy getting the gun out in time to use it. So first thing when it comes to your safety out in public, gas stations, the ATM, the scary places, you probably need to be leaning towards having a gun on your body somewhere. And even that might not be good enough, because I've also seen the videos of the guys pumping gas, off-duty cops. They've got a gun on them, but the three dudes walk up with guns to do the robbery, and what are you going to do? You can't just do the cowboy move and move your trench coat back and get your gun out, because that looks like you're getting a gun. So even if you have a gun on you in a really good concealed carry position, there's still got to be more planning. You have to, number one, understand that you might have to work to get it. There might have to be some type of a plan of you using some type of distraction or what, like, hey, look, it's the cops. And then you know, whatever. Yeah. I'm being silly about it, but yeah, you need to think about just having the gun does not solve your problems. Bad guys probably don't know you have one. Yeah. What we do see benefit people a lot is when they get a concealed carry permit, you get a gun, all of a sudden people walk around with a little bit more of an air of confidence. Yes. They feel better, and they're looking around, and just the look on a person like that sometimes deters criminal activity, because right, it looks like you're paying attention. You're not just a typical victim looking through your phone. A little more command presence. And it's not like you're looking for trouble or looking for a fight, but you're confident, and bad guys don't want to fight that. They want compliant. Yeah. They want easy victims. And so when it comes to being out, you know, yes, you have to be aware of your surroundings, but you have to really honestly be aware. And sometimes it's a hassle. Man, it's a hassle to carry a gun for protection. There's no like, what's the best gun, the best holster? Like, whatever, man, just get ready for this to be uncomfortable. Yeah. And that's the point. I heard somebody say it's not supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be comforting, knowing you have a tool there to help protect yourself. So get over the fact of so many people just come out here with like a 2-shot North American Arms Derringer 22 Magnum, and like, well, I got like, that's cool. And I honestly have started to tell people, you know what? Just don't carry a gun. You're going to shoot yourself, man. Like, just leave that thing at home. You're going to be fine. If your mindset is that's going to work, it's probably going to lead to some problems and definitely a false sense of security. Yeah. So yeah, situational awareness is important. It's kind of like a big package, and it's a journey, just like learning to shoot, learning to ride, learning to do whatever. You can't just one day think you want to do it, and then a week later, it's like you can't just watch a Conor McGregor fight and decide that the next week you want to do UFC. You could try it, but it's not going to work out. It's a journey. It's, you know, martial arts is a journey. That could be a 10 or 20-year deal. And so many people just want to get a permit, get a gun. Like, I want to get this thing, I'll be fine. And we kind of disappoint some people sometimes. We don't want to discourage people, yeah, but we don't want people to not know the truth either. Like, you know, well, how come I'm not shooting a gun very good? Well, you started 5 minutes ago. I mean, this is going to be a 5-year journey for you. And so part of our job as trainers is to be honest with people, yeah, not mean about it, but let them know what to expect for real, so they're not disappointed so quickly.
What does the Second Amendment mean to you?
Yeah, man, it means everything. And some people might think I'm a little biased. I'm a police officer. I own a gun range. I do gun training. So obviously we support the Second Amendment. But man, it is so critical. And this is another thing that people just really don't pay attention to a whole lot. And they think things are going good. And they think that phrases like common sense, gun laws would be a good thing. And people just hope that everybody else takes care of the problem and fixes the issues. And I understand that to some extent, but we're a problem is in this day and age is people are pulling the wool over everybody's eyes, and one little bitty step at a time, our rights are being picked away. And it's rough. And I would suggest, I don't have a lot of time to drive to the state capitol and talk to legislators. Somebody needs to do that for me. And so whether you support, whether it's, pick your organization, whether it's NRA or USCCA, or in Illinois, it's the Illinois State Rifle Association, man, you got to pick one of these groups or a few of them to help do this work for us.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about it to our friends and family and classes and training and on platforms like this to help spread the word, but it's financially, there's, you've got to jump in. So I highly suggest people get involved in that. As far as a law enforcement perspective, I wish every law-abiding citizen out there in America was riding around with all the guns they have. I see so many times we go to convenience stores where suspects walk in and shoot the place up, and it's like, does anybody here have a gun?
Yeah.
Well, no.
Where was the trained concealed carrier?
Problem solved. Not only for your own life and safety, but the bad guys aren't running around anymore. I don't want society to be like Judge Dredd necessarily, but people defending themselves appropriately, it has a deterrent effect. Death penalty, nobody cares about, the deterrence of prison.
Yeah. Deterrence
happens right there in the moment, and the word gets spread. And so I wish, we had many more people carrying guns for self-defense. I wish more people thought about it. And my personal opinion is I'm not down with any type of gun control. Not that it sounds like people try to make you sound like the crazy person. Like, well, we get the news crews out here a lot. They want to do a news story. Here's a new law in Illinois about this being banned and that. And the latest one in Illinois was the assault weapons ban. And it lists like 100 and something guns that are outlawed and all these high capacity magazines. And some of the guns are, 50 caliber big guns. And so the news folks would come out and be like, hey, Officer Kemp, what guns on this list do you think should be outlawed? None of them. Zero. Well, what about bump stocks? What about nothing? No, none of this is anybody's business whatsoever. And that's not the problem. Like, how about punish the criminals for once? Quit punishing me, quit punishing gun owners, quit punishing the good guys like every single time. How about put the hammer down on the bad guys that are killing people? Like, and that's what is common sense. And it's so frustrating to see that switched around. And just look in the news. I just saw a little blurb today about the New Mexico governor doing like an emergency. Like, all of a sudden there is no Second Amendment. We're making a third. Like, what?
She suspended concealed carry in the whole
yes.
state.
What are you talking about? This is absolutely. And one guy asked her, well, are the criminals going to follow this law? And she's like, well, no. Yeah. I'm like, man,
that gave away. It was strictly a political move.
It is absolutely crazy. So I don't support any of that. You should be able to, own whatever. You
mean the Second Amendment wasn't just written for hunting?
But machine guns aren't illegal, by the way. You just need a license.
That's right.
You can get a license and own a machine gun. I mean, look, turn on YouTube for crying out loud. There's 1 million people that own machine guns, and none of them are shooting up schools and robbing people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So
and no suppressors allowed.
Yeah, so Illinois is something else. It's frustrating, but every moment we can, when the news does show up here for an interview, I think they get. I don't try to be mean about it, but they hear something they weren't expecting.
Yes.
And we have to all just accept the fact that maybe to them that sounds weird, but we're not willing to give that up. Yeah. And it's you just see it one little step at a time. And I think most of us are smart enough to see where this road leads.
Yes.
Where this river is leading to the waterfall.
Yes. Would you say that most media outlets don't really even understand what the Second Amendment was written for?
Yeah, no. Oh, good grief. No clue. No history about it. None of that. It's just they're going off of just prior news stories and what their friends have told them. Nobody's putting in the time.
They all ask the same questions and same
good grief. I'm sure that you were a journalism major. I'm sure what the hell they taught you to do journalism, years ago is not the same today.
Right.
It's just talking heads repeating the same thing that their friends told them to say.
Yeah. Well, you kind of answered my question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you feel that legislation that bans certain guns and high capacity magazines infringe on your Second Amendment rights?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Look, there's so many millions of honest, good, law-abiding citizens in America that own all of this stuff, and they're not doing crazy stuff. And the point of the Second Amendment is to have a country armed so that the government doesn't take over all the people. It's not because of hunting. It's not because of, anything else. It's to have a nation that is not going to be run over by the government. That's it. And people don't like to talk about it, but that's the main reason. I'm a firm believer in that. And I'm not a historian by any means, but we can't give in to all this one little thing at a time. And that's what I'm afraid of, like with these assault weapons bans. Like it comes out, we want to ban 100 and something guns. Well, never mind. We just want to ban one. And if you don't agree with that, we're trying to, cooperate here. And that's just common sense. It's like, no, we're not going to.
When they make these laws, how do legislators expect law enforcement officers? What do they expect LEOs to do about these laws?
Well, I don't know. I think in Southern Illinois, anyway, most legislators and state's attorneys and local law enforcement understand that we're probably not going to be the ones going out and knocking on doors and checking for people's guns and confiscating people's guns. Thank goodness. I mean, I think most people understand how dangerous that could be, going knocking on somebody's door and saying, "Hey, we know you're a good guy or girl, but we're here to take your stuff." You just might run into a buzzsaw there. So I think in our environment, in this part of America, it's not something we've really had to think about. I know there's probably some places in the country that law enforcement would tell their officers, "Hey, we're going to go round up some guns or whatever." So I can't imagine ever. I think that would be a line in the sand for me if my boss were ever to come and say.
That was my next question. If they came to you and said, "All right, Dave, you're going to go confiscate guns today."
Yeah, no.
Career's over. Right?
Nope, not today. I would find, and I get with some guys, maybe you've been a cop for 2 years and you got 3 kids at home and you got like, I have to have a job. Like, what am I supposed to do? There's pressure there to do things for a certain reason. Luckily, in my position right now, I don't have to answer to anybody. So it's a good place for me personally to be in. But I think there's a lot of people taking a stand. I was mentioning earlier, I've got a friend of mine that's a pretty well-known trainer in the training business. He's working with a new company. They sell equipment in the firearms training realm. And at a point in their business a few years ago when they were first starting out, they were struggling. It was like day to day to pay the bills. They're just, getting this new company going. And the ATF came to them and made like this multi-million-dollar order for their stuff they're making. And the company said, "You know what? We're not selling our stuff to you.
No kidding. You've
done such damage to America and the Second Amendment in this place. We really need your money really bad, but you're gonna have to go get this stuff somewhere else."
Talk about taking the high road.
Wow. Man, no kidding. That's amazing. And maybe that's why everything happens
that's
for a reason.
Righteous is what that is.
Exactly. You did it because it had to be done.
Yeah.
And so that's what, I think if other people see that going on, it's kind of like the mob mentality. If you look around and see a lot of people doing the right thing, you want to be the next person. Like, well, hey, I want to do the right thing too. Yeah. And next thing you know, you have a tidal wave maybe going in our direction for once, and we'll just have to keep it going.
All right, so Dave, righteous seems to be the key word at the moment. What is this righteous savages? What is that?
Yeah, so essentially we started doing some classes earlier this year, and we kind of branded a tagline in these classes as defining us as righteous savages. So it doesn't mean that we're mean people, that we're jerks, or trying to go out and hurt people, but you have to be honest a little bit and understand that kind of what you do in defending yourself, whether it's with a gun or your bare hands, is that there's probably going to be some violence involved. And there has to be somewhere inside of you a capability of of doing that. And if there's not, it's real easy for people to just kind of freeze up and not really understand what to do.
So is that something people are born with, or something they can learn, this survival instinct or this instinct to be a savage, so to speak?
It's absolutely teachable, 100%. We see a lot of people. I'll give like a scenario, for example, like, okay, you're walking out to your car in the mall parking lot. You just got off of work at Payless Shoe Source, and you go to your car, and there's a guy there with a knife telling you to get in, and he's abducting you. What do? The guy's 6'6" and 260 pounds, and you're 5 foot tall, 100 pounds. What do you do? 99% of the time, the answer is, well, you get in the car. Well, why would you do that? And here's what people say. Well, what am I supposed to do? Which proves to me that they just don't know the answer. They don't know the solution to the problem. And when you don't know the answer, you immediately go to start imagining, well, what bad thing is going to happen to me now? So the focus is immediately on the guy's going to stab me or kill me. So, and there's nothing I can do. I can't just overpower the guy. I can't knock this guy out. And since there's nothing I can do, I just have to do whatever he says. So it's like a light bulb moment. Once we change people's thinking of this in that one little scenario to show them what to do, all of a sudden they're not afraid anymore so much. And so, like in that example, what we know from law enforcement experience and seeing people that have survived those attacks, the common denominator is the fact that victims resist. It doesn't mean you have to knock the guy out or do some UFC move or do some triangle choke to win the assault. Here's the thing with bad guys. They're really sometimes more focused on not getting caught than being a bad guy. In our classes, what we tell people is if you haven't been shot or stabbed or right at the beginning of the attack, there's a very good chance you're not ever going to get shot or stabbed. If the guy was really, really a bad dude, they would kill you first and then just take your stuff or go do whatever bad things they plan on doing with you. If they haven't done that right off the bat, they're a little bit or usually a lot concerned with who's looking. They want to do the crime as anonymous as possible, so then they can get you back to their well on their 50 acres in the middle of nowhere and do their Silence of the Lambs thing. And then how are you going to escape that? I tell people to think, imagine if you did get abducted and you got taken 50 miles away into the mountains and put in a well. Imagine if you could rewind your life all the way back, the car ride back to the parking lot, back to you standing outside of the car with the guy with the gun saying, get in the car. What would you do then? You would do something. You would run, you would scream, you would yell, you would do everything humanly possible, because that scenario is a million times better actually than the final of just going along with the guy. So pretty soon in our classes, people, instead of, the acronym for fear, you probably heard this before, is false expectations appearing real. A guy with a gun says, get in the car. The false expectation is, well, if I fight the guy, he's going to kill me. Well, you just made that up in your mind. You have no idea that that's even possible. It's like a movie you just made up. And in reality, the guy is so scared of getting caught and somebody seeing what's going on that all you have to do is just start screaming like a wild animal, and the guy, there's a good chance he just might run off. Yeah. And so now it's like, okay, so instead of thinking, how do I overcome this giant bad guy and knock him out, you decide, well, what's my plan? If I ever am facing an abduction or an attack, I'm going to resist or try to escape as hard as possible. And that might be fighting, biting, kicking, screaming. It's going to be all that to make sure I don't get taken away from here, because I've got kids at home. I got a family to live for. There's a good motivation behind why I'm doing this, and also knowing what the result is if you don't resist. So people start putting together these pieces of the puzzle of solving these problems, and all of a sudden they're not frozen by fear anymore. They don't want to think about somebody attacking them, but in the back of your mind, you've already thought about it. Your body won't go where your mind hasn't gone first. I've already thought about this problem. I pretty much have a general roadmap for the solution. So now I'm ready for this thing, whatever it is. So it's definitely teachable. People overcoming their fears and figuring out how to be a survivor. You don't have to, it's not that you're just born as a tough guy or tough girl. If you're born 6'6", 280, awesome for you. But this applies for everybody, and it's such a mental mind game of how we think about, how we process information. The mental side of what we do is critical, and nobody really thinks about it or trains it very much. But I would highly recommend getting into some books, reading about. There's a guy named Gary Mack that wrote a book called The Mind Gym. He was basically a coach for a lot of sports teams, football, baseball. He was the psychological coach. That if a pitcher is having a bad couple of weeks, he would go to them like, "Hey man, what's going on? You need to start thinking this way. Think positive. Think about, how do you mentally process your way through these problems?" And
Visualization.
and that stuff, yeah, it absolutely works. So, I'm a big fan of that type of stuff and training on the mental side of what we're doing.
You kind of answered my next question. I was going to ask you, what's the first step in someone to become a righteous savage in that learning training?
I would say it's a journey. It's probably a process for most people. It's understanding kind of what the threat is, what it is, what we're up against, what it takes to win a confrontation. Be a lot of students that are like, well, I'm going to get this gun and keep it in my pocket because I'm too old to fight. I'm too old to run. I'm too old or feeble to really defend myself any other way than this gun. And once again, we don't shy away from the fact of telling people violence is not probably going to keep you on your feet. Like, you need to also assume that this might end up on the ground. Just look at videos of people running for their lives. Most foot chases I've ever been in my entire life as a cop, the suspects fall down at some point. They're going so fast, they're trying to get away so fast that their head gets in front of their feet, they fall down. You're telling me that if you're going to run away from a bad guy, you're not going to fall down? Probably. Like, this is probably going to end up on the ground one way or the other. So, we really want to inform people of their reality of these situations and not sugarcoat kind of what's going on.
What's that on your wrist there?
I got a couple wristbands here to try and keep us motivated. One says righteous savages, and it's got a Bible verse, Psalm 144:1, which says, "Praise be to the Lord my God, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle." So that Bible verse has kind of been a slogan of the range since we opened. Another one here is a Bible verse, says James 2:18, and the slogan says, "Act like you believe." So the Bible verse talks about having faith and works, and it says, if you really believe, if you really have faith in God, then what you do is going to prove your faith. So whether it's in a faith context or just in your everyday life, you should do things like you mean it. Act like, if you're going to carry a gun for self-defense, you should act like you really believe something bad might happen. Don't go buy your, I don't want to dig on any brand names here. Don't go buy your $150 gun for self-defense that doesn't work very good, that has a janky safety, that all this, like, what is going on? Another way to put it is, do it like you mean it. Like, do you really mean, like, is this important? Like, are you really trying to save your family's life? If my wife went to the store and bought brand X gun that was $100, I'd be like, is that all you think of me? Dear, is that my life is like worth this? Like, you essentially bought a hammer.
Yeah. I have a question for you. What does the term toxic masculinity mean to you?
That just means woke nonsense from people that are trying to get men to not be men anymore. We need men and husbands and fathers that's your role. Is to be masculine. You should be proud of that. I mean, that accomplishes a goal for protecting your family, for being a leader, for having the confidence to do the right thing and be an example and not just go along with the crowd. So, this righteous savages theme we're kind of talking about. We're going to be starting a podcast pretty soon, and it's going to focus on that. It's going to focus on men being men. It's going to focus on men being a Christian leader, not being afraid to talk about their faith. I've seen, it seems like lately, really this year especially, we've seen a lot more guys not afraid to speak about their faith and how important that is in their lives. And sometimes you sit back and you just, I grew up not really going to church as a kid.
Yeah, where did your religious background come from?
Yeah, so grew up going to church. My parents didn't go to church. The first church I ever went to was with a buddy of mine. It was a Pentecostal church, and I thought, what's going on here? I don't understand how this all works. So it was, baptism by fire in the truest sense for that. But in my, like junior, senior of high school, started getting involved in church and youth group and that sort of thing. And I really wouldn't say I've sat on the sidelines a whole lot, but I haven't really pushed my faith on a lot of people. Haven't really talked about it a lot at work. I think people realize what kind of person you are by the fruits that what you have. If you're kind and generous and respectful and humble and all those things, but still, I think we do people a disservice sometimes by not verbally talking about our beliefs and what we believe in. And it's amazing how all it takes in a crowd of 30 dudes in a rough and tumble, you name it, tactical training class. One guy speaks up and is like, "Hey, man, I'm a Christian. I think this is great for XYZ reasons, and here's what I believe." Next thing you know, people are like, "Hey, me too." Like they're just waiting for the one person to take a stand. And I had a friend of mine say, I kind of see us having an awakening of sorts of men not afraid to speak up about their faith and joining together to pray for each other, be a leader, set an example. And if you get out there and say, "Hey, tell everybody, hey, I'm a Christian," it puts a spotlight on you and it makes you focus like, I've got a responsibility now. I can't just be, living my life for me anymore.
All right, Dave, Mr. Righteous Savage.
Oh boy.
We're going to wrap this up with a little fun. It's called rapid fire. I'm going to fire 5 questions for you. Let's see how fast we can answer. Are you ready?
Go.
Stand by. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Favorite movie?
Dumb and Dumber.
Favorite gun? Favorite gun?
Glock 17.
Favorite superhero?
Superman.
Full auto or semi?
Full auto.
Yeah.